Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my World of Darkness, where we go over the Thicker Than Water recap. Thicker Than Water is my own personal chronicle, and today is the 12th episode of said recap. Go watch the other ones if you haven't. It's a fun story, and I try to do some fun with the editing process so that you can see the characters and all that junk. That being said, I do want to point out that where I do the majority of the editing for everything, Serendipity, the player of the character Dawn Rose, she does the separating of characters from the backgrounds from the pictures that we find them on. That being said, Serendipity's not in town, so unfortunately my quality for these videos is going to be downgraded until she gets back, because I just can't do what she does. She's amazing. And she is off in the world for personal life and philanthropy. And we are all very proud of her for what she's doing and hope that she's having an amazing time. So good luck out there, Serendipity. I know you're going to do amazing, but we cannot wait for you to get back so we can continue torturing Dawn. That being said, I do want to hop right into this story because this was so much fun and unexpected things occurred, both for the players and for me, because I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and it is not going as planned, and that's always fun for everybody. But where we last left our kindred, they were in a car heading towards Safe Haven, directed by James Merrick, who led them to the chapter house of the Cult of Mithras. Currently, our coterie is consisting of James Merrick and Colin Griffin as NPCs. And as for the PCs, we have Tinia Japar, Deacon Royce, we have Sam Heron in his new Tommy persona, because he has changed around his face using his vicissitude gifts, and also Damien, who is now Axel, who has also had a complete makeover. As they head towards the building and they realize where they're going, there's a little bit of apprehension because they're not in the best terms with the Cult of Mithras at the moment. The cult has tried to utilize the coterie's services on several occasions, and it has not worked out very well. Most notably, them trying to get a hold of the funerary jar from the Sticks and Bones Chronicle. Now, tonight, however, when they arrive, the door is answered by a man that they've never seen before. He is a ghoul by the name of Comden. And Comden belongs to a new vampire that I'm introducing tonight, which I have used in the past. And Deacon Royce's player, Gwyn, is one of my older players for my Chronicles. So when he realized who this was, his eyes shot open. It was hilarious. But as they enter and they find Yolanda Porter and Alexander Thorne waiting for them, there's another vampire. He's older. He has a strong frame to him, but his eyes are yellowed with age. His teeth are graying. He's wearing a well-preserved older suit. And as he enters, Merrick looks at him. He addresses him as Victor. And Victor looks back and addresses him as nephew. Victor Loretta. Previously in my old chronicle, Vincent Loretta. I changed his name to Victor because I have a bad habit of repeating names. Alexander is something that pops up multiple times. Vincent is something that pops up multiple times. And I'm trying to put an end to that. I've done this with a couple of NPCs, but this is one of the more notable. Vincent Loretta, or Victor Loretta as he is now, is the broodmate of Joseph Barrett, the previous prince of Portland, Oregon, before Merrick was. He has a very interesting backstory that goes on and on forever. And again, I could do full character bios if you guys are at all interested on these NPCs, because they are so rich and full of detail. But Victor Loretta was the literal human sheriff of the township of Portland when it was first founded in the 1880s. He is also known to have ties with the Society of St. Leopold, the hunter organization. He was, in fact, a vampire hunter before his embrace. But as of late, in this iteration of Portland, he has placed his faith in something different. He places his faith in the cult of Mithras. And where Alexander Thorne had been claiming to be the pater or the patre of the cult of Mithras in the area, in truth he was more of a second in command individual, and he claimed the title as the true pater of the cult, for the area was not in town, and that true pater being Victor Loretta. Victor and Merrick excuse themselves in conversation and leave the coterie in the company of the younger Ventrue to discuss exactly what the cult of Mithras might be able to do to assist in the situation. As Alexander and Yolanda begin to question the coterie on the events of the night and everything that's going on, something unexpected occurs as they notice that Mercy, Anton Dracon's ghoul and bodyguard, is in the room as well. And as Alexander Thorne begins to prod at the characters, they hear a door open and Rose Dracon enters, who decides to take the Kindred into a more comfortable area so they can discuss the evening's events. As she leads them into the parlor, which is full of books and Mithric symbols all over the place, built into the architecture, she asks Comden to please bring them some refreshments, some melancholic refreshments specifically, so that they can relieve themselves from the adrenaline of the night's events. As Comden goes to get those drinks, Rose slams the door in the face of Alexander and Yolanda, telling them to run off and let the adults talk. They do have a very interesting talk with Rose at this point in time, where she informs them that they are in a very interesting position, where the cult of Mithras, Pater, the leader of the cult of Mithras in this area, is going to walk back into this room and is going to propose an arrangement. And where they may feel like they don't have any power over the situation, the coterie themselves actually should take advantage of this, and they do have much more power than they think. The conversation goes on, drinks are brought to them, and the melancholic blood that she asked for actually does do a lot to subdue the anxieties. Now, just to let everybody remember who exactly we have in the room, we have Rose Dracon, who is Anton Dracon's wife. She is the primogen of Clan Ventrue and wife of the seneschal of the city, who seems to have been one of the major players in the dethroning of James Merrick. However, Rose also was the individual who helped Axel escape when they came into the Elysium to get him out of there. The conversation goes on to explain that the cult of Mithras needs 5 volunteers for a specific event that's going to be taking place on Halloween of this year, and that is a modified version of a Mithric ritual known as the blooding. Now, she explains to them that the blooding is a ritual that they perform on vampires who are going to be loyal soldiers and followers of Mithras that go by the name of the Heralds of the Sun. She also, however, she does explain to them that they are not specifically going to be heralds, that they are going to be acting in a pageantry fashion of this, and that this ritual has not been done since before World War II. After explaining that the Kindred can in fact ask for things, that they can name their price, Victor Loretta may put it off as if they are doing such a major favor for the coterie and that the coterie owes them, that they themselves actually have more power than they're being allowed to know. After a while, Loretta re-enters, followed by Merrick and Jacob Munroth, the sheriff of the city. When they enter, Colin stands up and stands with them, signifying that he himself is also a member of this cult of Mithras, completely surprising his child, Tinia, who had no idea on this fact about her sire. They express what exactly is going to be happening, that they are willing to help house and hide them from the prince. The Camarilla has no idea of the larger picture of the cult of Mithras in the city. They have no idea that the safe house is here, and that the Kindred, if they choose to help out with the ritual that they are planning for All Hallows Eve, that they would be willing to not only offer safe haven, but also other payments. And the Kindred are also told that they do not have to answer right away, but they need the answer as soon as possible, so that if they are not going to assist, that they can find other individuals to assist. The Coterie agrees to help because A, they need a rest from all the war and the fighting that's going on between the Camarilla and the Anarchs. B, they need time to collect themselves and go through everything that they've learned. Tommy, Sam, still has all of those servers from Project Ragnarok they need to go through and try to figure out exactly what they can do. Not to mention Tommy is working on several projects that he has not been able to put any effort into at all in the past couple of weeks. There's also the fact that nobody knows where Dawn is, and they think that this will give them time to regroup and possibly locate their coterie mate. They are given rooms at the Cult of Mithras chapter house. They are told that they can stay there and that blood will be brought to them. Anything that they need will also be brought to them, and they have basically this house to themselves for the next 3 months. And at that point, we ended that Project Ragnarok and we opened what we are doing next, which is a modified telling of the Fall of London Chronicle that's located in the Fall of London resource book of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. I have been looking through this book, which by the way reads like stereo instructions, for a while, and I do plan on doing a review because it is kind of an interesting book, although it is kind of hard to follow with the way that it's written. It's not exactly the same fluidity of words that we get in Blood Gods, for that matter. But the story itself takes place in 2012. Now, our game is set in 2021. So how exactly would we be handling that? And that's where this modified blooding ritual comes into play. On Halloween night, the characters are all given white robes and necklaces that have a ruby sun on them. They meet up with a new character by the name of Gabriel, who has been brought in because over the downtime portion, we unfortunately lost Deacon Royce. He succumbed to the beckoning, and he made it about 7 weeks into downtimes. The way that we've been handling the beckoning in my game, just to let you guys know if you don't remember or if you haven't heard this before, is every game session, so once a week, we throw a willpower test for Deacon. If he fails, he just needs to get 1 success. If he gets straight failures, he loses a willpower for the next test. It does not affect his willpower in the game. It only affects his willpower towards the beckoning. So every week we throw, and if he does not get a win, he loses a die for the next willpower. Eventually he loses all of his willpower, and when he loses his willpower, he is officially beckoned. And unfortunately, we did lose Deacon Royce. Maybe he'll come back one night. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But even Gwen, who is Deacon's player, knew that his character was not really going to last long in this setting. V5 is very harsh on elders, and Deacon's not an out-on-the-field character. He's more of a background possibly an SPC, if you really want to consider it anything. But I am sorely going to miss Deacon Royce as an active member of this coterie. Now, Gwen's brought in his new character, which is a city gangrel. Now, to properly build Gabriel, we used a mix of the creation rules from the core book and also concepts from the Sabbat guide, and also a little bit of homebrew. And what we ended up doing was we built a city gangrel, which are a faction of gangrel who, since they do not live out in the country, they do not have regular gangrel disciplines. So instead of animalism, fortitude, and protean, he got celerity, obfuscate, and protean. The way that we worked that out is his predator type gave him celerity. He's an alley cat. He is an aggressive force feeder, and therefore celerity was taken. He got obfuscate because he's on Path of Night, which is a variation of the Path of Cathari in the Sabbat guide. So he's going to be making a more selfish pleasure driven on ideology of Path of Night, based on the Path of Cathari. Basically what the La Sombra Lucita practices. It should be very interesting. Other than that, we built him standard. He is effectively on humanity of 1 at all points in times, but he runs off the convictions of his path instead of worrying about anything else. So we introduced him as being another volunteer and a practitioner in the cult of Mithras since he's left the Sabbat. So after becoming acquainted with Gabriel, a woman in a Persian cat mask walks into the area where they're being kept and tells them that the ritual is going to begin and they need to follow her. It is now Halloween night. The house is completely full of people who are celebrating. There's decorations everywhere, but mostly it's for the sun. They are led into an area in a library which has a false wall. They go through it, they go down the stairs, and they come into a ritual chamber, which is rich with description. Roman columns, a skylight that opens underneath a pond in the backyard that lets the moonlight filter in with hazy, reflective light from the water above, casting interesting shadows throughout the chamber that they're in. Pools of blood, statuaries of a soldier slashing a bull's neck that fountains blood, 5 large sarcophagi filled with blood, vampires all in costume and regalia. And at that point in time, they notice that there is a 5th member of their group. Now there is Tinia, there's Tommy, there's Axel, there's this new Gabriel, and there's someone else. But they're all in these garbs which have a veil over their faces, so they can't exactly see who exactly it is. Where a person wearing crimson ritual robes waits for them with a whip at his side and holding a very large container. As they are laid down into the sarcophagi, submerging themselves in blood. The man who's running the ritual stands in the center holding a scepter and wearing a rather large ornate ring, and he speaks aloud in Latin while the participants also chant. And as the coterie lays down inside their sarcophagi and the blood from the jars is poured on them, they begin to fade. And that's where things become a little different, because as I said before, the fall of London is set in the year 2012, which is several years before my game is actually set. The characters are given a limited idea of what's going on as they spoke with Rose months beforehand. She told them that they are going to be doing a modified version of a ritual known as the Blooding, which causes the vampires to become loyal followers and soldiers of Mithras. But they're not doing this to turn the players into loyal followers of the cult of Mithras, but to open them up to a memoriam, to be able to see things that had happened in the past, but not for them, for different heralds. The blood in the containers that was poured over the coteries contained the blood of 5 heralds of the sun, and that is what memories they received. The whole concept of this is Victor is trying to figure out what had happened to these 5 kindred who were woken up in 2012, right before the Second Inquisition attacked in London and caused all hell to break loose and the cult of Mithras to lose their footing. The cult in Portland is trying to figure out exactly what happened to Mithras, if the rumors of his destruction are true. So we moved on to the actual story of the fall of London. And I will go ahead and I will read you the scene setting just to let you see exactly how this works. The characters awaken one by one in a dingy storeroom in a basement of a warehouse. The first sensation they experience is the rich taste of blood in their mouths, followed by the uncomfortable realization that they're lying horizontally strapped to a table. Each character realizes they're being fed vitae from a ceramic goblet by a bald man with ebony black skin. This is Adelino da Silva. He wears similarly plain black button-up shirt, trousers, and shoes. As the man pours the blood from the goblet, he mutters something quietly and reverently in Latin. As each character takes in their surroundings, they notice that, aside from each other, the metal tables they are strapped to, and the man waking them up, there's very little else of interest in the room. The walls are whitewashed breeze blocks, and the floor and high ceilings are concrete. A large reinforced metal door opened ajar marks the only exit from the room. Each character notices that the clothes that they are wearing are rags, pitted heavily with dirt and mildew. Their hair is matted, and there is also dirt encrusted under their fingernails. The blood given to each character is vampire blood, and while exceptionally tasty, there's not much of it, only enough to awaken the vampire from torpor and whet their appetite. The characters all wake up as different characters. I did not have them remember who they were. Tommy doesn't know he's Tommy. Axel doesn't know he's Axel. Tinia doesn't know she's Tinia. And the way that I handled who was who, I did... First off, in the appendix of this book, there are 5 NPCs, or there are 5 ready-to-go player characters which help out with this storyline because they are built to be the heralds of the sun. So if you are going to play this, it's a good idea to play with the characters provided, although you don't have to. In fact, some of the things in the book kind of contradict. In fact, at the very beginning of this, it talks about being able to use certain levels of aspects that aren't on any of those character sheets. So, who knows? I mean, you could very well play it with characters that you yourself built for this reasoning, but if you want to play it off as like a one-shot or something like that, or even as this to introduce new players to the game, there's already characters in here ready for you to go. And it's a full-on character sheets in the back in Appendix 3, so go for it. It works out pretty well. What we did is, since there's 5 characters and 4 players currently, what I plan on doing is when Serendipity gets back, giving her the other one, I had each of the characters roll a D10. When they rolled, I had 1 and 2 being the first character, 3 and 4 being the second character, and so on. And I just randomly handed them their characters, which was a lot of fun because the characters aren't necessarily clans that they're used to playing, and also they're not exactly genders that they are in real life. So this is letting them step outside of the box and really have something new to latch on to. I've always been a huge fan of allowing people to create their own characters, but just randomly giving them the characters, which was effectively the blood that was poured on them during the blooding ritual, it made it very interesting to see who got what and how they reacted to certain situations, which my players did not disappoint, as they never do. Just to go over, just to give you guys a quick overview of the characters that are now involved, I do want to let you know who the characters are and what they are, but I'm not going to tell you who is playing them, because it's just going to be so much fun to see what happens and then figure out who they are in the end. If any of you guys have a guess at all on who is playing who just by play style, I am so interested to know if you can tell who they are simply by my descriptions, because these guys they're not playing the same characters. So like the Tommy's player is not going to be running around throwing Molotovs and using vicissitude on people. It's going to be a completely different game that the players are going to remember the occurrences and actually maybe even help their characters grow as time goes on. So we have Alice Mockingdale, who is a 10th generation Tremere. We have Tommy Smith, who is a 12th generation Nosferatu. Tony Castielli, who is a 10th generation Bruja. Lady Catherine Montague, who is an 11th generation Ventru. And Dr. Henry Banerjee, who is an 11th generation Hecata. And at the time, I think he's actually, when he went down for torpor, was a Cappadocian who had survived since the purge from the Giovanni. Now, the characters all wake up with Aldino waking them up. The first thing that happens is Tommy Smith, the Nosferatu, freaks out. He does not know where he is, and he summons on his powers of potence to snap out. Aldino tries to calm him down and explains to them that he had to wake them up, that they have a mission to do, and he's here to get them acclimated to the modern world because things have changed. They don't even know about World War II. They were in torpor before the Blitz, so this is all completely new for them. He then lets them all up. He takes them all to get food and clothing. Tony is not happy with this situation. Tony has a high humanity, and he sees that the food that they're providing for them is not to his acceptance. Tony is a bagger, and the fact that they're presenting him with live food is just kind of throwing him off there. The food presented is 6 mortals. There's 2 unconscious and unkempt older men who smell quite bad, 2 young women in smart casual attire who are awake and have been bound and gagged, 2 young men wearing overalls who are awake and have been bound and gagged as well. They feed because they have to. A couple of the Kindred don't care. They just grab on and they start feeding. Lady Catherine grabs the fanciest looking one out of all of them and sinks her Ventru fangs into the young girl because she's a Ventru and can only feed on the higher class of individuals. After being fed, they're led into a room where there's clothing on the ground. There's also showers at their disposal, and they get cleaned up and they feed. And I gotta say, like, the idea of a bunch of vampires who have been in torpor for about 70 years and then are woken up and they have to try to figure out what they're going to wear to try to fit into mortal society is hilarious. So after feeding, getting cleaned up, and dressed, they're led to the office of Darius Shirazi. And Darius is a very interesting character. He's highlighted very prominently inside the first chapter. He is a Malkavian who's a member of the Cult of Mithras, along with a gangrel by the name of Mickey Wheeler, who's there. He seems to just be there to keep Darius on track for the mission because he's dumbstruck. He's acting as if he's surrounded by his favorite celebrities, and he gets them to. He tries to get them to read his biography that he wrote on the accounts of Mithras and everything, and it's actually a pretty interesting and funny situation to watch them go through. But as Mickey finally does get Darius to calm down, he points out that there's a letter for the characters, and that reads, "My dear and loyal friends, I'm sure you have many questions, but for the time being, I must ask you to be patient. The circumstances around your awakening are clearly unusual, and I apologize for this. Much has changed in the time you have been asleep. I regret to inform you that, most tragically, our Lord and Master Mithras himself was destroyed some years ago. Ungrateful traitors from within his cult betrayed him to his enemies. The cult continues, however, devoted to his memory and his legacy. Your resting place was lost to us, buried as a result of damage caused to London by a great war between the nations of Europe. It is only through recent circumstances that you have been revealed again, and rightfully returned to us. You woke on the cusp of a great storm that is about to envelop. London is in a fury. I, and many others, still loyal to our cause, have already retired to other domains far from here to escape its wrath. However, one important task remains, which has been entrusted to you, our only remaining heralds of the sun. Artifacts of spiritual value to the Mithric cults are still in London. They are kept by those who were once loyal to us, but who have now strayed from the path. Whether they were involved in the conspiracy to murder our Lord is unknown, but they are no longer to be trusted. A clay seal, once used by our Lord to mark official documents, left in possession of Lady Anne Bowsley. A silver ring inset with a ruby, believed to be in the possession of the Tremere Sri Sansa. A bronze dagger of Egyptian style, gifted to the Nosferatu Richard de Ward. A Frisian cap once worn by our Lord in his original Mithrium, since claimed by Gwenllian Firth Anwen. We humbly beseech you to seek these items out and retrieve them before the storm descends. Also, take with you the goblet that was used to wake you. Once you have completed the task, call the number 0794 030728, and we will send a team to extract you from London and guide you to safe haven. May good fortune and the blessings of our Lord and Master go with you. Thomas, Pater of the Sun, Guardian of the Temple. So as they finish reading, Darius gives them all a phone, and Mickey and Darius do their best to try to explain how a cell phone works and what to do with it. But as they are given the cell phones, unfortunately, at that point in time, the players, a couple of the players realize that they're being watched by drones through a window. They start hearing gunfire outside, and they all book it. Getting to a security room with Darius, the players notice that they're surrounded and they need to get out. Darius does explain to them, however, that there is a secret tunnel exit in the basement near the room that they were kept and woken. They run. They all bolt. And as they are leaving, they can hear the gunfire getting closer and closer. The attackers, the aggressors, have breached the safe haven of the building. And it takes Dr. Henry Banerjee, who uses his Sense the Unseen, to look around at what was there, what is now available in the Shadowlands, and he can see the outline of the old ruins that this building is built on top of, and he can see the exit that leads out to safety behind one of the walls. As they get over to the wood paneling that's covering the exit, both Tony and Henry have a hard time trying to rip the panel off the wall, but our dear Tommy, our wonderful Nosferatu Tommy Smith, runs over, pushes them out of the way, grabs it, and wrenches it off the wall with all of his strength. They then start heading down a dark and wet tunnel. And this is where things just go off the wall. They're heading down, and as the tunnel opens up to a view of the Thames River, some of the Kindred don't realize exactly how much realize a short stop is, and Lady Catherine and Dr. Henry both go plummeting into the river, which actually sets them both to frenzy due to embarrassment, and it was bad. It was bad. Tommy, however, the Nosferatu, saves the day once again. Lady Catherine, when coming through the tunnel, was smart enough to cover the hole up with the piece of wall that they had removed. But now so We got a Ventru and a Hakata. So we got a Ventru and a Hakata in the Times River freaking out on each other, beating the hell out of each other, and then Tommy the Nosferatu jumps in and separates them as Tony is trying to pull Lady Catherine up. Tommy is trying to subdue Henry, and it was ridiculous, and it was just it was one of those things where God had to intervene, and eventually Tommy does subdue Henry, and I called post. So we left the game off with them in the Times in the middle of this night. So we don't exactly know what's going to happen after this, but I've got 3 vampires who are now in the river, or who have been in the river. So there's a good chance their cell phones are broken. At least 3 of them out of the 5. So the way that I'm doing this, just to give you an overhead, is the vampires from my chronicle are being given a memoriam of these vampires from the Fall of London storyline. And the characters effectively have like a short-term amnesia problem with this whole thing, and as the chronicle goes on, they'll get more and more of their memories back. I am 100% excited to see exactly how this thing pulls out and what kind of trouble this plotline gets into, but I do suggest where Cults of the Blood Gods, you could literally go in there, open the book, and just play without even reading it ahead of time. I do suggest reading this ahead of time first, because there's a lot to read and very little information to give over to the players. So unless you want to sit in front of your players and read a book and occasionally speak to them, I do suggest a little bit of an overview for yourself, at least, while you're going through this. Because it is a build your own adventure type of scenario where the players actually get to decide which chapter they go to next, it might be a good idea to give the whole thing a good read through, just so you know what's going on. But I cannot wait to see what happens. I would love to hear anybody's input if you have played The Fall of London, because it's such an in-depth and beautiful storyline, and I think that it is going to end up being something fun to add to the players' memories, to something to give these kindred that have no reason having this memory, but having it come into play, and also letting my players who are set in a game that happened after this also get the full experience of it. Not just NPCs who are telling them about it, but actually get to have lived through the whole thing without their modern bias. So, my name is Voivode Maquette. This is my World of Darkness, and I look forward to hearing from anybody's reactions over this. Hopefully, also, when Serendipity gets back, we can get back to our proper quality of video editing, and we will continue on as this goes by. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time on our World of Darkness. Goodbye.